I'm Bella, 34 female. I live in a quiet city, in a small apartment that smells of old paper and lemon tea. My life's work is spent in the climate-controlled silence of a university's rare manuscripts library, where I preserve the stories of others. For 25 years, I thought my own story was inextricably linked with my best friend, Jessica, but I was wrong. I was about to have major surgery, a terrifying journey into the unknown, and the one person I thought would hold my hand chose a party in Vegas over me instead. She thought her casual cruelty would be a footnote in our friendship. She never imagined it would become the final chapter. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Friendship, like the fragile manuscripts I handle every day, is a delicate thing. It requires care, respect, and a gentle touch. Some bonds are stitched with the strongest thread, capable of withstanding the ravages of time and circumstance. Others, you discover too late, are held together with nothing more than habit and a glossy veneer of shared history. My friendship with Jessica was one I would have sworn was forged in steel. We met when we were 9 years old, two awkward, ponytailed girls who bonded over a shared love for fantasy novels and a mutual dislike of playground politics. For a quarter of a century, she was my person, the fixed point in my turning world. Our lives had diverged, as lives often do. I chose a path of quiet contemplation. My joy came from the silent thrill of discovery, of finding a forgotten footnote in a 17th century text or perfectly restoring a water-damaged folio. I found solace in order, in history, in the tangible connection to the past. My apartment was my sanctuary, filled with books, carefully tended plants, and the comforting quiet that allowed me to think. I didn't need much to be happy. A good book, a cup of tea, and the knowledge that the people I loved were safe. Jessica, on the other hand, had chased the spotlight. She was beautiful, effervescent, and had a magnetic personality that drew people in. While I was learning the art of preservation, she was mastering the art of presentation. She became a lifestyle vlogger, a modern-day storyteller whose life was her primary text. Her channel was a curated collection of perfect moments: brunches at trendy cafes, unboxings of luxury goods, and whirlwind trips to exotic locales. Her apartment was a pristine, all-white studio designed for optimal filming, a stage where she performed the role of a woman who had it all. I was proud of her success, even if I didn't fully understand its appeal. I was the quiet, unseen archivist of her life, the one she called when the camera was off, the one who knew the messy, unedited drafts behind her polished final cuts. I was her anchor, or so I believed. Looking back, the cracks in our foundation had been showing for years. They were subtle at first, hairline fractures I chose to ignore. There was the time she forgot my 30th birthday, only to post a long, emotional vlog the next day about the importance of cherishing your tribe, complete with a photo of us from 10 years prior. When I gently mentioned it, she'd been awash in apologies, blaming her hectic schedule, and sent over an expensive gift that felt more like a brand sponsorship than a heartfelt apology. I forgave her. There was the matter of the money, too. Small loans here and there for a deposit on a new camera, or to tide her over until a brand deal came through. The money always came back, eventually, but the requests became more frequent, always cloaked in the casual air of someone who assumed my quiet life meant I had disposable income. I never said no. How could I say no to my sister in all but blood? The biggest sign, the one I see so clearly now, was her reaction when I first told her about my diagnosis. I had been suffering from debilitating headaches and dizzy spells for months. After a series of tests, the neurologist sat me down and showed me the MRI scans. A tumor, technically benign, was growing near my brainstem. It was a meningioma, a slow grower, but its location was perilous. It was pressing on critical nerves, and the only viable option was a complex, high-risk surgery to remove it. The doctor was optimistic, but he didn't sugarcoat the dangers. Stroke, paralysis, permanent nerve damage, all were possibilities. I called Jessica the moment I got home, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I needed my best friend. I needed her to tell me everything would be okay. Her initial reaction was perfect. The gasp of shock, the flood of questions, the fierce declarations that we would get through this together. She was a brilliant performer. She came over that evening with a bottle of wine and we talked for hours. She held my hand. Dee wiped my tears and promised she would be there every step of the way. "You are not alone in this, Bella," she'd said, her eyes earnest and wide. "Whatever you need, I'm there. End of story." In the weeks leading up to the surgery, that promise began to feel hollow. My life became a whirlwind of pre-op appointments, consultations with specialists, and getting my affairs in order. I had to name a medical power of attorney, an emergency contact who could make decisions if I couldn't. My parents were retired and living in another state, and while my older brother, David, was a lawyer, he was in the middle of a massive international case that had him flying back and forth to Singapore. It was a stressful time for everyone. When I asked Jessica if she would be my primary contact, the person the hospital would call, she readily agreed. "Of course, Bells, don't even think twice about it," she'd said. But as the date drew closer, she grew distant. Calls would go to voicemail more often. When we did speak, the conversation inevitably turned to her. She was planning a trip to Las Vegas with a group of other influencers. It was a huge networking opportunity, she claimed, a collaboration that could elevate her channel to the next level. She spoke about it constantly, the hotels, the parties, the brands that would be there. It felt like she was living in a different universe. One where my life-altering surgery was a minor inconvenience to her social calendar. I tried to be understanding. It was her career, her life. I didn't want my situation to overshadow her ambitions, but a creeping sense of dread began to settle in my heart. The surgery was scheduled for a Wednesday. Her Vegas trip was planned for that exact week, from Tuesday to Sunday. I assumed, naively, that she would adjust her plans. A day or two wouldn't make a difference for a networking trip, would it? For your best friend of 25 years who was having a tumor removed from her brain? It was a question I was too scared to ask, because deep down, I think I was terrified of the answer. Our bond, once a source of immense strength, now felt like standing on quicksand. With every passing day, with every unanswered text, I could feel myself sinking, and the person I thought would pull me out was busy planning a party in the desert. The week before the surgery was a blur of anxiety and logistics. David, my brother, was a rock. Despite his insane work schedule, he set up a video call with me and his legal partner to walk me through all the paperwork, ensuring my will and medical directives were ironclad. "It's just a precaution, Bella," he'd said, his face looking tired but kind on the screen. "The legal equivalent of wearing a seatbelt. You're going to be fine." His pragmatism was a comfort, a stark contrast to the emotional static I was getting from Jessica. I finally found the courage to broach the subject with her on the Sunday before the operation. I called her, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. "Hey, what's up?" she answered, her voice loud and airy. I could hear music and laughter in the background. She was at another brunch. "Hey, Jess," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I was just calling to confirm a few things for Wednesday. Do you have a pen? I wanted to give you the surgeon's direct contact info and the hospital ward number." There was a pause. "Oh, right, Wednesday, shoot. Can you text it to me? I'm out right now and it's crazy." My stomach tightened. "Okay, I can do that, but I also wanted to check. You're still good to be my point person, right? You'll be in town." The silence on her end stretched for an eternity. I could hear a fork clinking against a plate. "About that," she started, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper. "So, this Vegas thing is kind of a massive deal. The main brand event is on Wednesday night. It's like the keynote party of the whole trip. I literally can't miss it. It would be professional suicide." I felt the blood drain from my face. I sank onto my sofa, the receiver suddenly feeling heavy in my hand. "Oh," I managed to say, the single syllable a universe of disappointment. I assumed you would postpone it, or come back early." A sigh of exasperation came through the phone. Bella, you don't get it. This isn't just a party. It's my career. These are connections I can't make over email. Besides, what am I going to do? Sit in a waiting room for 8 hours? You'll be asleep. You won't even know I'm not there. Her words were like tiny shards of glass, each one embedding itself in my heart. She wasn't just dismissing my need for her, she was trivializing my fear. To her, my surgery was an 8-hour nap. To me, it was a chasm I might not cross. I would know, Jess, I said, my voice trembling. I would know you were there. I need to know someone is there. For me, in case something goes wrong. Nothing is going to go wrong, she aid with a forced, brittle cheerfulness. You're going to be amazing. The doctors are the best. Honestly, you're worrying for nothing. I'll be sending you all the good vibes from Vegas. Good vibes? She was offering me good vibes. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my chest. This wasn't the Jessica I grew up with. This was a stranger, a caricature of a friend who spoke in hashtags and platitudes. So you're still going, I stated, the question draining out of my voice. I have to, she said, her tone defensive now. My flights are booked, the hotel is non-refundable. It's all part of the sponsorship package. I can't just back out. People are counting on me. I'm counting on you, I wanted to scream. I have counted on you for 25 years, but I couldn't. The fight had gone out of me, replaced by a profound and weary sadness. Okay, I whispered, I understand. Great, I knew you would, she said, relieved. Look, I have to go, but I'll call you Tuesday night before I fly out. We'll have a proper chat then. Moi, love you. The line went dead. I sat in the silence of my apartment, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. I didn't cry. I was too numb for tears. I had spent my entire life preserving the stories of others, and in that moment, I realized the story of my own friendship was a fiction I had been telling myself. On Tuesday afternoon, the day before my surgery, I texted her. My bag was packed. My apartment was clean. David had rearranged his schedule to fly in that night. He was taking me to the hospital in the morning. He would stay until I was out of surgery before he had to catch his flight to Singapore. He was moving mountains for me. Jessica couldn't move a flight. I knew it was a fool's errand, a final, desperate plea for a scrap of the friendship I thought we had. My text was simple, stripped of all accusation or anger. It was just the raw, unvarnished truth of how I felt. Hey, heading to the hospital soon. I know you're busy, but I'm really scared. It would mean the world to me if you were here. Is there any chance you could cancel your trip? I need my best friend. I sent it and put my phone down, my chest aching with a hollow dread. I told myself not to expect anything. But a tiny, stubborn part of me, the part that remembered skinned knees and shared secrets, held onto a sliver of hope. An hour later, my phone buzzed. My heart leaped. I picked it up, my hands clammy. It was a reply from her. LOL, you actually thought I'd cancel my Vegas trip for your surgery. LOL, laughing out loud. She was laughing at my fear. She was laughing at my pain. She was laughing at the very idea that our friendship might be more important than a party. It wasn't just a no. It was a mockery. It was cruel, dismissive, and it severed the last thread of hope I had. The entire foundation of my life, the certainty of her friendship, crumbled into dust with those 9 words. My vision blurred with tears. I saw our entire history. The sleepovers, the graduation parties, the late-night phone calls, the promises to always be there for each other, and I saw it all for what it was, a memory. It was an artifact from a past that no longer existed. With a strange sense of calm, the kind that comes after the worst storm has passed, I picked up my phone one last time. I typed 2 words, my own little epitaph for our friendship. My mistake. I sent it. Then I opened her contact, looked at her smiling, perfectly filtered photo, and I pressed block. I blocked her number. I blocked her on every social media platform. I didn't do it out of anger or a desire for revenge. I did it as an act of preservation. My own. I was an archivist, and it was time to place this dead and toxic artifact into a sealed box, never to be handled again. My surgery was in less than 12 hours, and I would be facing it without my best friend. But for the first time, I realized I would also be facing it without the dead weight of her falsehood. And in a strange way, I already felt lighter. The morning of the surgery arrived with a clinical, gray dawn. David drove me to the hospital, his presence a quiet, steady comfort. We didn't talk much. He seemed to understand that I had no words left. He just squeezed my shoulder as I was checked in, his grip firm and reassuring. "I'll be right here until they kick me out," he promised, and he was. He sat in the pre-op room with me, quizzing me on 18th century poets to keep my mind occupied, until a nurse with kind eyes came to wheel me away. The last thing I saw before the anesthetic pulled me under was my brother's face, etched with a concern so genuine it made my heart ache. This was real love. This was real support. It wasn't loud or flashy or broadcast for an audience. It was just there. Waking up was a slow, foggy process. It wasn't like in the movies, where you gasp and sit bolt upright. It was a gradual surfacing, like a diver ascending from the deep. Muffled sounds beck. AIM voices, blurry shapes sharpened into the sterile white of a hospital room. A persistent, rhythmic beeping became the soundtrack to my return to consciousness. My head felt heavy, wrapped in a thick bandage, and there was a dull, throbbing ache that was a constant reminder of the violation it had endured. But I was alive. I could feel my toes. I could wiggle my fingers. The first wave of relief was so powerful it was almost painful. "Welcome back, Bella," a warm voice cut through the fog. "You did wonderfully." I turned my head slowly, wincing at the movement. A woman in blue scrubs stood beside my bed, adjusting my IV drip. She had reddish-brown hair tied back in a neat bun and a smile that reached her eyes. "My name is Sarah," she said. "I'm your lead recovery nurse. Your brother was here. He had to leave for his flight, but he left about 100 messages for you. The first one is, 'I told you so.'" A weak smile touched my lips. That sounds like him. My voice was raspy, a stranger's voice. "The surgery was a complete success," Sarah continued, her tone both professional and deeply kind. "Dr. Evans was able to remove the entire tumor. Your vitals are strong. You're going to be very sore for a while, but you're on the best possible path." The relief washed over me again, this time bringing tears with it. They streamed silently down my temples, soaking into the starched pillowcase. I was safe. I had made it to the other side, and I had done it without Jessica. The thought didn't bring the sting of pain I expected. Instead, it brought a strange sense of clarity. The world I had woken up in felt different, sharper. The colors seemed brighter, the air felt cleaner. It was a world where I was solely responsible for my own happiness and my own safety. The illusion of my friendship with Jessica had been the real tumor, a benign growth I'd allowed to press on my life for far too long. Now, it seemed, both had been excised. Over the next few days, the recovery ward became my entire universe. Sarah was a constant, calming presence. She was more than just a nurse. She was a master of a specific kind of kindness, one forged in the crucible of other people's pain. She knew when to push me to walk the hallway, my IV stand as my dance partner. She knew when to let me rest. She knew how to talk about the difficult, messy parts of recovery without fear or pity. She spoke to me like a person, not just a patient. During one long afternoon, as she was checking my bandages, I found myself telling her. I didn't mean to. The words just came spilling out, a quiet, halting confession about a 25-year friendship and the text message that had ended it. I told her about Vegas, about the LOL, about the profound loneliness I had felt. She listened without interruption, her focus entirely on me. When I finished, my voice thick with emotion, she simply nodded. "I see a lot in this job," she said softly, her hands gentle as she taped a new dressing. "And I can tell you this, the people who show up for you in this room, they're the only ones that matter. The rest is just noise." She paused, then looked me directly in the eye. "And sometimes, the quietest people have the most to say. You strike me as one of them." Her words resonated deep within me. I was quiet. My work was quiet. My life was quiet. For years, I had seen that as a deficiency, something that made me less interesting than Jessica, with her loud, vibrant public life. But Sarah didn't see it that way. She saw strength in it. The discovery that truly shifted my perspective came on the third day of my recovery. A small gift basket arrived at the nurse's station for me. It wasn't from Jessica. It was from the university library staff, my colleagues. Tucked inside, among the fruit and puzzle books, was a card signed by all of them. But there was also a small, separate envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from Mr. Abernathy, the head librarian, a man I'd always found intimidating and remote. His note was brief, written in the elegant cursive of a man who revered the written word. It read, "Bella, we are all thinking of you and wishing you a swift recovery. The library is quieter without your dedicated presence. Please know that your position and the new acquisitions budget you proposed for the restoration department have been fully approved by the board. Your work is valued. Rest and return to us when you are able." I read the note 3 times, the acquisitions budget. It was a proposal I had worked on for 6 months, a detailed plan to acquire and restore a collection of 19th-century botanical illustrations. I had poured my heart and soul into it, convinced it would be rejected as a frivolous expense. Jessica had scoffed at it. "Who even cares about old drawings of flowers?" she had said. "You should be proposing a budget for a library TikTok account. That's where the world is now." But the board had approved it. Mr. Abernathy, a man of few words, had seen the value in my quiet, meticulous work. My passion, which Jessica had dismissed as a dusty hobby, was respected and rewarded by the people who truly understood it. I looked around the stark white hospital room. I was alone, but I was not lonely. I was supported by a brother who would cross the world for me, cared for by a nurse who saw strength in my quiet nature, and valued by colleagues who respected my intellect. This was my new world. It was a world built not on the shifting sands of a performative friendship, but on the solid bedrock of genuine, mutual respect. The pain in my head was receding, replaced by a powerful, invigorating clarity. I had been so focused on the story of my friendship with Jessica that I had failed to read the other texts of my life. I saw it now. Jessica hadn't just abandoned me, she had inadvertently liberated me. She had given me the gift of a blank page. And as an archivist, I knew exactly what to do with one of those. It was time to start writing a new story. Recovery is a slow, methodical process, not unlike the restoration of a fragile manuscript. It requires patience, a steady hand, and an eye for details others might miss. As my body healed, my mind, free from the fog of anesthesia and the emotional weight of Jessica's betrayal, began to operate with a new, incisive clarity. The archivist in me, the part that seeks to order, to categorize, to understand the provenance of things, took over. I wanted to understand the full scope of Jessica's deceit. It was no longer about the emotional hurt, it was about the facts. My brother David called every day from Singapore. During one of our calls, I mentioned, almost as an aside, the small loans I had given Jessica over the years. "It was never much," I said. "Just a few hundred here and there. She always paid it back." "Did she?" David asked, his lawyer's mind immediately kicking into gear. "Are you sure? Do you have records?" I didn't. It was all informal, based on texts and trust. "I'll check my bank statements when I get home," I said, a new resolve hardening in my voice. When I was finally discharged from the hospital, the first thing I did, after sinking into the glorious comfort of my own bed, was turn on my laptop. I pulled up my online banking portal and began to work. For the next 3 days, I applied the same meticulous methodology I used at the library to my own financial history. I cross-referenced my bank statements with my text message archives, creating a spreadsheet. The columns were date, amount, reason given, and date repaid. The picture that emerged was staggering. Over the past 3 years, I had loaned Jessica a total of over $9,000. The reasons were a litany of lifestyle vlogger woes: broken camera, editing software subscription, deposit for an influencer retreat, sponsorship fell through. My date repaid column, however, was mostly blank. She had paid back the first few small amounts, lulling me into a false sense of security. But for the last 2 years, she hadn't paid back a single cent. She had simply relied on my lack of confrontation and my deep-seated trust to keep the bank of Bella open. But the most damning discovery was a single transaction from 6 months ago, a transfer of $3,000 to her account. I remembered the reason vividly. She had called me in tears, claiming her mother had a sudden medical expense that insurance wouldn't cover. She'd sworn me to secrecy, saying her mother would be mortified if anyone knew. I hadn't hesitated. I had transferred the money that same day, my heart aching for her family's trouble. Now, with cold suspicion, I did something I should have done long ago. I went to her mother's social media page. Her mom was a prolific poster, documenting her garden, her book club, and her frequent cruises. Scrolling back 6 months, I found what I was looking for. During the exact week Jessica had claimed her mother was facing a medical crisis, her mom had been posting smiling selfies from the deck of a cruise ship in the Caribbean. There was no crisis. There was no medical expense. It was all a lie. A calculated, cruel lie designed to prey on my empathy. My breath hitched. This wasn't just selfishness. This was fraud. This was a deep, calculated betrayal that went far beyond a missed hospital visit. The Vegas trip wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of calculated deception. She hadn't just seen me as a friend. She had seen me as a resource. An open line of credit with no interest and no consequences. The archivist in me needed the final piece of the puzzle. Where did that $3,000 go? Why Vegas? What was so important that she would lie to her best friend about a sick parent and abandon her during brain surgery? Because I had blocked her, I could no longer see her public profiles. But the internet is its own kind of archive, and nothing is ever truly deleted. I used a public portal at the library to anonymously view her vlogging channel. Her latest video, posted 2 days ago, was titled Vegas High Roller. Sparkles betting it all for my dreams. I clicked play. The video was a flashy montage of casino floors, champagne glasses, and Jessica, looking manic and excited, talking to the camera. "Hey, dream chasers," she chirped. "I'm here in Vegas for the World Vlogger Poker Tournament. The buy-in was insane, but you have to bet on yourself, right? The grand prize is $100,000 and a 1-year hosting contract with a major media brand. This could change my entire life. Wish me luck." It all clicked into place. The lies, the desperation. The $3,000 wasn't for her mother, it was the tournament buy-in. Her networking trip was a high-stakes gamble. She wasn't a brand ambassador on a sponsored trip. She was a gambler who had used my compassion as her stake. My surgery wasn't an inconvenience to her career. It was an inconvenient reality that punctured her fantasy world. I felt a chilling calm settle over me. The emotional hurt had been cauterized, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I had all the pieces now. I had the bank statements. I had the text messages. I had the publicly available video of her admitting to using a large sum of money for a poker tournament. I had the evidence. An archivist's job is to preserve the truth, to ensure the story is told accurately, without embellishment or omission. My friendship with Jessica was over, but the story wasn't finished. There was one final entry to be made, and it would be a correction of the record, written in the clearest, most permanent ink I could find. The desire for revenge is often portrayed as a fiery, passionate thing. A burning need to inflict pain, to shout from the rooftops, to create a spectacle. But that wasn't what I felt. My anger was cold, precise, and silent. It was the anger of a librarian who finds a priceless book defaced. The goal isn't to destroy the book. It is to restore order, to remove the offending marks, and to ensure the integrity of the collection is maintained. My life was my collection, and Jessica was a fraudulent entry that needed to be formally deaccessioned. My plan began to form, not as a complex scheme, but as a series of quiet, deliberate actions. It was a plan that leveraged my own strengths, my patience, my attention to detail, and my understanding of systems. It was also a plan that would use Jessica's own weaknesses, her arrogance, her desperation, and her obsession with her public image as the instruments of her own undoing. First, I called David. I laid out everything I had discovered, my voice even and emotionless as I listed the dates, the amounts, and the lies. I sent him the spreadsheet, the bank statements, and the link to Jessica's poker vlog. He was silent for a long time after I finished. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight with a fury he was barely containing. "Bella, this is beyond a scummy friend," he said. "This is wire fraud. The lie about your mother to get that $3,000 is a criminal offense." "I know," I replied, "but I don't want to press charges. I don't want a public, messy fight. That's her world, not mine. I just want to be made whole. And I want to ensure she can never, ever do this to me or anyone else again." "All right," David said, his tone shifting into professional mode. "I understand. We'll handle this with precision. A quiet kill, not a massacre. Here's what we're going to do." The plan David outlined was beautiful in its simplicity and its brutal effectiveness. It was a two-pronged attack, one legal and one personal, both designed to be deployed with the dispassionate accuracy of a surgeon's scalpel. The first prong was a formal demand letter from David's law firm. It would be a meticulously documented claim for the $9,000 she owed me, plus interest, citing the evidence of her own vlog as proof that the largest sum was obtained under false pretenses. The letter would give her 30 days to repay the full amount, or civil proceedings would be initiated. It would be sent to her registered business address, a P.O. box, ensuring it arrived with cold, corporate formality. The second prong was more subtle, and it was my own contribution. I knew Jessica. I knew that at some point during her Vegas trip, likely when she was losing, her performative guilt would kick in. She would try to call me. She would need to tell herself she was still a good friend, to check the box of caring. She would call the hospital, expecting to get a simple update, something to assuage her conscience before she went back to the poker table. And that was where my own plan would intersect with David's. I called the hospital and asked to be put through to the recovery ward. When Sarah answered, I explained the situation. I didn't give her all the sordid details, just what she needed to know. "Sarah," I said, "the friend I tall. Do you about Jessica? It's very likely she will call the hospital asking for an update on me. She is no longer my emergency contact, and I do not wish to have any contact with her. My brother, who is my lawyer, has advised me to sever all communication." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I understand completely," she said, her voice firm. "Patient privacy is our highest priority. What do you need me to do?" "If she calls," I said, "I would be grateful if you would adhere strictly to hospital policy. Tell her you can't release any information due to patient confidentiality. But I want to add one more layer, based on my brother's advice. Can you tell her that all inquiries regarding my status are being directed to my legal counsel, and then give her David's office number?" I could almost hear Sarah smile over the phone. "Consider it done, Bella. It would be my pleasure. You just focus on getting better. Let the systems do the work." And that was it. The trap, if you could call it that, was set. It wasn't a trap of aggression, but of bureaucracy, of rules, of the cold, hard facts she had tried so hard to ignore. She lived in a world of illusions, of filters and carefully edited narratives. I was about to reintroduce her to reality. A reality where actions have consequences, where money is a finite resource, and where the words legal counsel carry a weight that LOL could never brush aside. I spent the next few days focusing on my recovery. I took short walks, I read, I savored the quiet of my apartment. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The background noise of Jessica's drama, a constant hum I had grown so accustomed to, was finally gone. There was only silence. A deep, restorative silence. It was a silence that was sharper, cleaner, and more powerful than any angry words I could have ever screamed at her. She was in Vegas, surrounded by the noise, the chaos, the desperate gamble for a life she thought she deserved. And I was in my quiet apartment, healing, knowing that the most devastating move is sometimes no move at all. You simply let the other player's reckless gambles lead to their own inevitable checkmate. The call came on a Friday night, exactly as I had predicted. I was at home, curled up on my sofa with a cup of chamomile tea and a book on medieval cartography. My phone was on silent, tucked away in another room. I had no interest in being a direct audience to the detonation. My part in this was over. The story of what happened next was pieced together for me later, first by Sarah, and then in a series of frantic, blocked voicemails from Jessica that David later forwarded to me for the record. Jessica's perspective: she was losing. The World Vlogger Poker Tournament was not the glamorous, life-changing event she had vlogged about. It was a brutal, humbling grind. Her initial stake of $3,000, my $3,000, was dwindling fast. The confident, high rollers she was playing against were sharks, and she was bleeding chips with every hand. The dream of a $100,000 prize was evaporating under the harsh casino lights, replaced by the acrid smell of desperation and cheap cigars. Her vlogging persona was cracking. The pressure to maintain the illusion of success for her followers, while internally panicking about her mounting losses, was becoming unbearable. And in that moment of crisis, as it always did, her mind turned to me. Not out of genuine concern, but out of a selfish need for validation. She needed to perform the act of being a good friend to reassure herself that she was not a bad person. She needed to feel my forgiving, anchoring presence, the one she had always taken for granted. She stepped away from the poker table, her face a mask of fake concern, and walked to a quieter corner of the casino floor. She pulled out her phone and dialed the main number for the hospital. She had unblocked my number briefly, hoping for a text, but had gotten nothing. The silence, she would later scream in a voicemail, was so weird and passive-aggressive. "Hello, I'm calling for an update on a patient, Bella Rossi," she said to the hospital operator, her voice oozing with a syrupy sweetness. "I'm her best friend." She was transferred to the recovery ward. The phone rang twice, and then a calm, professional voice answered. "Recovery, this is Sarah speaking." "Hi, Sarah," Jessica chirped. "My name is Jessica. I'm Bella Rossi's best friend. I'm so sorry I can't be there. I'm traveling for work, but I'm just dying to know how she's doing. Is the surgery over? Is she okay?" There was a crisp, professional pause. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, her voice perfectly neutral. "But due to patient confidentiality policies, I am unable to release any information about patients over the phone." Jessica was taken aback. This was not part of the script. "Oh, no, I'm her emergency contact," she lied smoothly. "She would absolutely want you to talk to me." "I see," Sarah replied, her tone unchanging. "Let me check the file." Jessica could hear the soft tapping of keys. The wait felt longer than it was. "According to the updated directives in Ms. Rossi's file, you are not listed as an emergency contact. I cannot provide you with any information." A flicker of panic went through Jessica. This was wrong. This was an obstacle. "That must be a mistake," she insisted, her voice losing its sugary edge. "I've been her best friend for 25 years. Just tell me if she's alive, for God's sake." "Ma'am, I cannot discuss any aspect of a patient's condition," Sarah said, her voice now carrying a hint of steel. "However, the file does have one specific instruction regarding inquiries." Jessica leaned forward, desperate for any scrap of information. "What is it?" "All inquiries regarding Ms. Rossi's status, from you or any other party, are to be directed to her legal counsel." The words legal counsel hung in the air, cold and heavy. This was a language Jessica understood, the language of trouble, of consequence. It was not the language of friendship. Her lawyer," Jessica stammered. "Why would I need to talk to her lawyer? I just want to know if my friend is okay." "I have the contact information here if you'd like it," Sarah said, as if offering a restaurant recommendation. "The firm is Sterling and Price. The attorney's name is David Rossi." "David, my brother." The reality of the situation crashed down on Jessica with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't a clerical error. This was a calculated, impenetrable wall. She had been deliberately and officially shut out. She wasn't just being ignored, she was being handled. She ended the call, her mind reeling. The noise of the casino floor seemed to mock her, a cacophony of bells and sirens signaling her own personal jackpot of failure. Her first instinct was to call me, to scream, to demand an explanation. But my number was still blocked. Her texts wouldn't deliver. She was locked out. In a full-blown panic, she called David's office. It was after hours, but she left a frantic, rambling voicemail, a torrent of accusations and feigned hurt. "David, it's Jessica. I just called the hospital and they won't tell me anything about Bella. They said I have to talk to you. What is going on? Is she okay? This is insane. I'm her best friend. You need to call me back immediately." She went back to the poker table, but her concentration was shattered. She made a series of reckless bets, her hands shaking. Within an hour, she was out of the tournament. Busted. My $3,000 gone, her dream up in smoke. She stumbled out of the casino into the neon-drenched Vegas night. Defeated, broke, and now completely terrified, she checked into her hotel room. And waiting for her, forwarded to her email from the P.O. box she rarely checked, was the final, devastating blow. It was a PDF attachment with the subject line, "Formal demand for repayment." It was from Sterling and Price. It was from David. It was a 6-page document detailing every cent she owed me, complete with exhibits of her lies and a link to her own vlog as evidence of her fraud. The confrontation was complete, and it had all happened while I was miles away, reading a book, sipping tea. She had screamed into a void, and the void had answered with the cold, hard voice of the law. There was no dramatic fight, no tearful accusations. There was just the quiet, efficient, and utterly devastating execution of a well-laid plan. She was alone in a city of millions, holding a piece of paper that represented the total implosion of her life, a life built on a foundation of my stolen money and her own lies. The book of our friendship hadn't just been closed. It had been sealed, cataloged, and archived under fraud. The aftermath of a storm is often quieter than the storm itself. In the weeks that followed, my life settled into a new, peaceful rhythm. My physical recovery progressed steadily, the dull ache in my head fading a little more each day. I returned to work at the library, where I was greeted not with pity, but with a quiet, respectful warmth. I dove into the botanical illustration project, the approved budget a tangible symbol of my own value. The intricate work of restoring the delicate, hand-colored plates was a form of therapy, each careful brushstroke a meditation on repair and preservation. Jessica's life, by contrast, imploded with spectacular public velocity. David's demand letter, a legally binding document that she could not ignore, sent her into a tailspin. The frantic voicemails she left for him became legendary at his law firm. They cycled through every stage of narcissistic grief. Denial, "This is a misunderstanding. Bella would never do this." Anger, "You're trying to ruin my life. I'll sue you for harassment." Bargaining, "Can we work out a payment plan?" Like $20 a month. And finally, a pathetic, whimpering depression, "I have nothing, I've lost everything, my life is over." David, true to his word, handled it all with dispassionate professionalism. He responded to her hysterics with calm, concise emails outlining her legal obligations. Faced with the undeniable proof and the threat of a lawsuit she could not possibly afford to fight, Jessica capitulated. She had to borrow money from her parents, the same parents whose fake medical crisis she had used to defraud me, to pay back the $9,000. A check, issued from her father's bank account, arrived at David's office via courier. It was a quiet, humiliating end to her financial deception. Her professional life crumbled just as quickly. The disastrous Vegas trip, where she had promised her followers a victory and delivered only radio silence followed by a hasty exit, led to a mass exodus of subscribers. Her comment sections, once filled with adoring fans, became a toxic wasteland of speculation and criticism. The brands that had once partnered with her grew distant. Her carefully constructed image of effortless success was shattered, revealing the desperate, dishonest foundation beneath. The last I heard, she had deleted her vlogging channel and moved back in with her parents, her career in ruins. I never spoke to her again. I never felt the need to. My silence, I realized, was the most powerful statement I could have made. It denied her the one thing she craved above all else, an audience for her drama. By refusing to engage, I had refused to be a character in her story any longer. I was the author of my own. Months turned into a year. My hair grew back over the faint scar, a silvery line that was the only visible trace of my ordeal. It was a reminder not of trauma, but of strength. A reminder that some things can be excised, allowing for healthier things to grow in their place. I thrived at the library. The restored botanical illustrations became a celebrated exhibit, earning the university national recognition. I was promoted to head of special collections, the position that old Mr. Abernathy had held for 40 years. One afternoon, while sorting through a new acquisition, I came across a collection of personal letters from a 19th-century female explorer. In one letter, she wrote about the pain of being betrayed by a companion on an expedition. "He saw the journey as a means to his own glory," she wrote. "I saw it as the destination itself. In the end, I had to leave him behind to finish the map alone. It was a lonelier path, but the lines I drew were finally my own." I ran my fingers over the faded ink, feeling a profound connection to this woman across the centuries. I had finished my own map alone. The lines were clearer, the landmarks were truer, and the destination was a place of quiet, unshakable peace. My life wasn't loud or flashy. It wouldn't have made for a very exciting vlog. There were no dramatic parties, no luxury unboxings. There was just the gentle rustle of turning pages, the smell of old leather, the quiet satisfaction of a day's good work, and the love of a brother who would cross an ocean for me. I had lost a best friend, but I had gained myself. And in the quiet archive of my own heart, I knew that was an exchange of immeasurable value. I had closed the book on Jessica, and in doing so, I had finally given my own story the space to be written. And it was a beautiful one.